I'm 82 years old, and it's only now, at this point in my life, with more days behind me than ahead, that I finally understand why I pushed everyone away. It's a strange thing to admit. Strange because for most of my life, I thought I was doing the right thing, or at least the necessary thing. I'm saying this now because the house is quiet, the way it's been for years. My hearing isn't what it used to be, but even if it were perfect, there would be nothing to hear. No footsteps, no kettle boiling, no voice calling out from down the hall, just the soft hum of old wiring and the shuffle of my own breathing. You get honest when you're this age. Not noble, just honest. There's no reward for pretending anymore. I didn't lose people because I was cruel. I lost them because I believed distance was safer. For me, for them, for everyone. But that's not how life works. I see that now. I grew up in a house where you didn't talk about how you felt. My father was a hard man, quiet, always working, always tired. My mother was gentle, but she held everything inside, like it was her duty to absorb every emotion before it could reach anyone else. I learned early that silence kept things calm, and once you learn that lesson young, it stays in your bones. By my 20s, I had become the sort of man people described as independent. I wore that word like armor. Independent meant I handled my own problems. Independent meant no one had to worry about me. Independent meant strong. What I didn't understand was that independent, the way I lived it, also meant unreachable. Back then I worked long hours, warehouse work, then later in maintenance for a manufacturing plant. I came home tired, ate, watched a bit of TV, and convinced myself I'd call a friend or visit my parents next week. Next week turned into next month. Next month turned into next year. Life has a way of slipping by quietly when you're not paying attention. I met a woman in my 30s. Her name was Clara. She was patient in the way some people are born patient, like she had been put on this earth to give everyone around her one more chance than they deserved. We were never dramatic, never loud, but we were different in one painful way. She let people in. I kept them out. I didn't even do it deliberately. That's the hardest part to talk about. Most of my mistakes weren't choices. They were habits. Invisible ones, like the way you reach for a light switch in a dark room. She'd ask about my day, and I'd give her the short version. She'd try to sit close, and I'd shift without meaning to, leaving a couple of inches of space. She'd plan small things, dinners, visits, outings, and I'd tell her I was tired. She thought I understood. She probably did, and she probably forgave me 1,000 times more than she should have. But forgiveness isn't glue. It doesn't hold everything together forever. We never fought. That might sound good, but it's not. Silence can be worse than anger. Anger at least means someone still believes the other person can change. Ours was a quiet drifting, the kind that doesn't announce itself. One day you wake up and the person beside you looks like they've been standing on the other side of a river for years. I didn't realize the distance I'd created until it was too wide to cross. There were smaller moments, things I didn't think much about at the time. My sister inviting me over for her kids' birthdays. I always had a reason not to go. The plant was short-staffed. I needed to fix something around the house. I had errands.
A friend from school stopped calling after I canceled on him 5 times in a row. At the time, I figured he was busy too. Now I know he simply gave up. My mother's last birthday. I remember that one too well. I told myself I'd visit on the weekend. She passed before the weekend came. I wasn't there. I wasn't anywhere. You don't feel the cost when you're young. Life gives you second chances in your 20s, a few more in your 30s. By your 40s, you realize people have quietly adjusted to your absence. They stop asking you to show up. They stop expecting anything from you. That's how distance wins, not with a blow, but with surrender. The turning point, the moment everything became clear, came much later. Clara got sick. It wasn't sudden, but I treated it like it was, like I'd been ambushed by something that had been creeping towards us for years. I remember sitting next to her hospital bed. She was thinner than I'd ever seen her, but her eyes were still gentle, still patient. She didn't ask why I hadn't been more present in the years before. She didn't ask why I kept people at arm's length. She just held my hand, the same way she always had, even when I didn't hold it back. I wanted to tell her everything I'd never said. But when a person is near the end, they don't need confessions. They need comfort. So I stayed quiet, thinking I'd have more time. I didn't. She slipped away on a cold morning in February. The nurse came to tell me, but I already knew. The room felt empty in a way that rooms aren't supposed to feel. I sat there long after they took her body away, in a chair that creaked every time I breathed. And for the first time in my life, I understood what silence really sounded like. Not the peaceful kind, the hollow kind. The kind that comes when there's no one left to receive the words you kept inside too long. I went home to an empty house. Her books, her sweaters, her mug beside the sink, evidence of a life I had only partially joined. I realized then that I had spent decades protecting myself from something that was never a threat. Love wasn't dangerous. Closeness wasn't suffocating. Letting people in wasn't a weakness. The danger was distance. The suffocation came from loneliness. The weakness was thinking I didn't need anyone. And by the time I understood that, it was too late to offer the truth to the person who needed to hear it. In the years after her passing, I tried to repair what I could, but life doesn't always allow for repairs. My sister had her own family, her own routines, her own memories, many of which didn't include me. Old friends had grown older. Some had died, some had moved, some simply didn't remember the closeness we once had. You don't get do-overs in your 70s. People are kind, polite, welcoming even, but they don't forget the years you weren't there, and you can't blame them for that. So I lived quietly. I read. I cooked simple meals. I took walks in the early morning before the neighborhood woke up. I learned how to sit with my thoughts, though they weren't always kind. It wasn't a tragic life, just a small one, smaller than it could have been. The real regret isn't a single event. It's the life you never fully stepped into. Now, at 82, I finally see the simple truth. I pushed people away because I convinced myself I didn't matter enough for them to want me close. And because I believed that, I behaved in ways that made it true. Distance became my language, quiet became my shield, and time, well, time kept moving. If you're listening to this, I want you to understand something, not as advice, not as a warning, but as a man speaking the truth he should have spoken long ago. People don't drift apart because of big arguments or dramatic betrayals. Most of the time, they drift because someone, often without realizing, keeps stepping back instead of stepping forward. Connection requires presence. It requires effort. It requires letting yourself be seen, even when it's uncomfortable.